I'm a veteran, come out with an injury. I've been playing music for years and had a hiatus where I couldn't use my right arm for about 3 years, so I stopped playing guitar completely and I've played live piano for about 7 years as well.
Just doing the music course for veterans and essentially been learning how to finally play guitar. I've had a guitar from probably about 10 years and I've never been able to put anything together because I've just been a bit nervous of learning bad habits, and within a space of 6 weeks and only coming here for an afternoon once a week, I've gone from knowing 0 songs to essentially knowing 2, 3, nearly off the top of my head.
I'm finding that music's quite therapeutic. I struggle with all these complicated chords, but I'm just starting to get my head and literally my hands around them. So I'm very excited.
I'm Jamie. I'm doing electronic dance music production course.
What's your background, bud?
Military.
Nice.
Ex-Royal Dragoon Guard, 17 years. Started DJing when I was younger. Then I went to Germany and DJed out there. And then, fast forward in a long time, COVID kicked in and I had nothing to do. Like us all, we got an hour to go out and have some exercise. And then I started to look into something called electronic production. And then this is where I am now.
This wonderful program, Ableton, and it's very technical, but very complex, incredibly capable though.
Yeah.
We're down here at UWL, this incredible studio, and putting together some fine tunes.
I'm astonished that we've actually got musicians. Like, these people can do improvisation, comedy, and they can do music. That's a great thing to find out, and it's good.
Yeah.
And they're enjoying it.
I think if I was, educated that way as a child, I think I could have been, quite musical, but I never got that education, so it was all lost.
I was a sea of symptoms of it's all in my head, illnesses that you think you've got, and before you know it, you're just in a world of pain. When doing this few hours of distraction, and you're 100% better.
Well, for context, my side of it was doing the dance music bit in here in the Townshend Studio, and we gathered some tables. We only were a very small group, 2 or 3, in some weeks. So we put the tables in the middle, and I'd started off with a plan of what I was going to teach each week, and a lesson plan, what we call a scheme of work, for each week, with learning outcomes at the end, in the same way that we would ordinarily design something like that. And I very quickly had to abandon it all, really, and just let something happen on the basis of the pace of the guys that I was with. Short answer, yeah, you see them developing some learning, and then trying out a musical idea. But I found that I couldn't do it in the way that I would normally do it, in that sort of classic didactic way of saying, well, this is what we're going to do now, this is the reason for it, I'm going to demonstrate it, now you have a go, rinse and repeat. I couldn't quite do it like that. And I think there are multiple reasons for that. One, these guys are coming in cold to some extent, not just cold with the particular thing we were trying to do, so the particular bit of software, but entirely cold to music production and the language of it in some cases. And as is always the case when we teach at university as well, there's a real mixed ability in the very small groups, so you very quickly have to adjust. Now when you're teaching a class in an undergraduate or postgraduate degree course, maybe we've got somewhere between a dozen and 20 people in a class. You don't pick up on we know that there's a difference of ability and prior knowledge, but you don't necessarily pick up on that with the sort of nuance where you can then completely change what you're doing. With a very small group, I was able to do that because there was only 2 or 3 of them. You know, it wouldn't have worked at all if I'd have carried on ahead with my plan. So the learning of music and musical ideas and things like that was a slow process, and I would say really you could only see that as an arc at the end, and if I'm being absolutely honest, probably only with one of the participants you could see they'd made some progress. There was only one other participant, and his attendance was a bit patchy, and they were a little reluctant to share things with me in between the sessions. So yes, but to a modest extent. Being able to change the space of the room, the shape of the room helped. So you'll probably see in the film, there's a few little glimpses of it in the film, but we've got little tables in here that we can move around, and we set up a little four-way sort of bunch of tables in the middle with the laptops, and we put MIDI keyboards on the tables as well, and we actually put powered speakers. Pete gave us a whole collection of powered speakers with this room. So one of the things we were able to do on one of the weeks, and this was probably the biggest success I would say in terms of just having something happen in a group and having a light bulb moment, was we wirelessly connected the computers, which means they'll play not just at the same tempo or whatever, but they'll play on beat together, they'll play synchronized. And then we specified a key, and we talked about that a little bit, and then we just let people improvise. I taught them some of the improvisation tools in Ableton effectively. And that was, a couple of them had a moment on that day. I think one of the other guys who was just dropping in for the day, part of the other group, who wanted to be part of this one, was there on that day, and so I did a very quick explainer of how you just work with some of the improvisation stuff. And at the end of the session, I'm not sure if we captured this on film or anything, but at the end of the session they were having a sort of group jam. Now, I would never have been able to do that in a classroom or a studio or any of our other spaces really. The space doesn't allow that sort of, to do that kind of jam. They kind of needed to be quite close together, you know, and they needed to work for an hour or so and practicing little things to see if they worked. And we needed to be able to set up this wireless thing, and we needed to be able to play separate speakers, you know, back in the room. So you could do that sort of thing as a performance or a sort of a workshop, I guess. It's not brand new by any means, but you can't really do that in the teaching setting that we usually have in higher education, which is either a music studio or a classroom of computers. So the space has helped us do that stuff, yeah. If we get to run this project again, and I'm not sure at the time of saying this whether we definitely will, we've applied to be able to do this, you know, as a bigger project over the course of a couple of years. So what I hope to do, if we can do that sort of work, is to try out more of the stuff we've been trying out. I just dipped my toe in the water really with trying out some of this other stuff. The cognitive impairment, the PTSD, that sort of thing, it overlaps to some extent with what we see in our young people, our students, who, particularly in my course, electronic music production, often present with or report that they have a neurodiversity, almost always ADHD related type thing. So those challenges of concentration and organisation that to some extent the veterans would be experiencing are not too dissimilar, you know. So doing some work and trying out other ways of learning, other ways of doing, you know, classes where we learn how to make music and produce music, and then using that to inform what we do in the broader teaching here at the university. That's how I would hope it would develop. I mean, that's just one thing really. I mean, there's other things we could do here because we have the space and the flexibility to do it. So you asked about how Pete's instruments would sort of come into this equation at some point. you know, as they stand at the moment, if you look around the room, they're quite impenetrable, aren't they? They're very complicated, esoteric, tricky machines to operate. You certainly couldn't walk in here and do anything useful without a lot of work trying to understand each individual instrument or whatever. And that's great for the people who want to do that, but we want it to be something else as well. We want it to serve another purpose other than just for the people who feel confident enough to play with these things. So I think it's important that we also have other technologies in here that help to translate these ideas in these instruments. So it's my hope, if we can find a way to do it, to have a collection of much simpler instruments in here, tabletop synthesizer, drum machines, and sound making boxes of some sort that complete new people can come in and just play with and experiment with. Pete and I have been talking about how we sort of describe a manifesto for this place, and I think he would like it to be, you know, first and foremost about play and exploration. You can't really walk in and just play with some of these things straight away. They might be off-putting. So I think it's important we have some contemporary technology, some translatory technology, I think, and I think that will afford not just things like the Veterans Project, which then hopefully informs the teaching we already do. I think it will allow us to do other things like work with children, for example. There are a few other groups that I've seen online working with electronics and electronic instruments with children, just to inspire them. I'd also like to do some stuff with adult learners, just exploring creativity with sound, maybe evening classes, something like that. But these are, at the moment, they're sort of incubatory ideas, and we're at the stage where we're trying to figure out how best to have this space set up, and it being as flexible as possible gives us more chance to do those things. I hope we can do things maybe with children, maybe with adult learners, maybe with, you know, people from the local community who are just interested in sound or exploring that realm, particularly, you know, if they're inspired by Pete and his story. What would we need to do? Well, I think, you know, having a variety of equipment in here, different ways in which they can interact with sound other than the old equipment is key. Getting the room set up in the right way is going to be key too, and this has been a sort of long old journey of trying to figure this out, how we use this space best. So this model of having it a changeable, mutable space, I think, is going to be important. There was something else I was going to say off the back of that, it's just left me for the moment. So we were talking about what other things. Oh yeah, so the other thing that needs to happen, I think, from our point of view, in other words, the technicians and academics working here at the university, is you know, it's easier to learn how to use a space and what it can do for teaching if a lot of it is locked down to some extent. So if you know how it connects internally, how it works, what the room is capable of doing from the point of view of a facilitator. But we've been resisting that. We're trying to have it so that we don't make decisions that then lock us into, for example, the instruments are static and they have to remain in space because they're connected to a set of cables that come back to a central location, or that you have to work with a certain set of controllers or connections or whatever it is. I've been, much to the annoyance of my colleagues, I've been trying to fend off those decisions, choosing instead to try things out over a longer period of time and not commit to any particular layout of the room or set of, you know, peripheral tools that we use. So the short answer to what I'm saying is we'll need to learn how to use a space that is flexible like that. So it might be more of a complicated space to learn to use because, you know, there isn't one button on the wall you can come in and switch on and then everything connects and everything works. It isn't going to be like that. It's going to be a lot of different things, a lot of possibilities. So learning, and I'm not saying here that we all need to learn how to use all of the instruments. I don't mean that. I mean learn what's possible in the space and the different kinds of classroom, workshop, teaching environment that you can set up in here. I think that's probably going to be our challenge, and I think that's going to be something that, you know, we want to open this in the start of the academic year at the end of this year, so in October. At the time we're showing this will be in a few weeks' time, right? So we could work towards that date if we wanted to, and have everything in situ, all decisions made. And quite a lot of my academic colleagues want me to do that because they want to plan teaching, and I'm trying to resist that and saying, well, not really quite sure how we're going to do it. So yeah, learning to drive it, and hopefully, if it isn't all fixed and set in stone, then it will inspire ways in which we can do different teaching that perhaps people haven't thought of until a certain time. Maybe it will inspire different ways of doing assessments, different ways of, you know, having one-to-one sessions or doing workshops. So I think quite a lot of it will emerge from having it, and to some extent, you know, we will find out over the long period of time.